Hello, I'm Kelda Yoon. The Ford government is speeding up its timeline for allowing convenience stores in Ontario to sell alcohol. The province is also giving the owners of the beer store more than $200 million as part of the deal. CBC senior reporter at Queen's Park, Mike Crawley, has all the details.
Premier Doug Ford, who doesn't drink, is about to widen access to booze in Ontario.
We're getting it done faster. In fact, we're getting it done starting this summer.
Starting August 1st, grocery stores that are already licensed will be allowed to sell beer in cases, plus ready-to-drink cocktails. From September 5th, up to 8,000 convenience stores get the chance to sell booze. Then at the end of October, all grocery stores become eligible, including big box supermarkets like Walmart and Costco.
The largest transformation of Ontario's alcohol marketplace since the end of Prohibition nearly 100 years ago.
As part of the deal, the government is giving the multinational brewers that own the beer store $225 million. Ford says it's to protect jobs.
So it's not going into the big breweries' pockets or anything like that. It's going to the frontline people and who we support.
The beer store's end of the bargain? It must keep open at least 300 locations and continue running the recycling program. But come 2026, big supermarkets that aren't within 5 kilometers of a beer store will have to take back empties.
That's not how our grocers are set up here in Ontario, so that's the big problem with the announcement.
Still, grocers are getting full access to sell beer, wine, cider, and premixed drinks, and they can undercut the LCBO on price.
We aren't going to dictate to them what they sell, their beer or their wine, no different than a loaf of bread. That's going to be up to them.
Neither Ford nor his officials would say how much all these changes will cost the LCBO in foregone revenue. Industry insiders believe it will amount to hundreds of millions of dollars each year. Convenience stores see the move as a long-awaited lifeline.
I think definitely there will be a lot more foot traffic that will be coming looking for beers and things like that.
And the craft beer sector is certainly toasting the news.
It's great. More distribution, the better for us craft brewers.
And it's overwhelmingly popular. Overwhelmingly. I've never seen numbers this high before.
That popularity is driving speculation that Ford could call an early election. Reporters asked him 3 times today if he'll stick with Ontario's fixed election date of June 2026. Each time, he refused to answer. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
The University of Toronto has issued a trespass notice to students at the pro-Palestinian encampment on campus. The school's administration had given protesters until 4 p.m. today to accept an offer that would require them to remove their encampment. But the students rejected that offer earlier today. School administration and protesters have now agreed to meet this weekend, with the students now given until 8 a.m. on Monday to leave the premises. Chris Glover has more on the school's offer and why students say it's just not good enough.
Organizers here are calling that deal, that offer from the university, a farce. And they say that the university is offering them basically the process that already exists for divestment requests. And of course, they are demanding that the university divest from businesses and other organizations that fund the state of Israel as the war in Gaza continues going forward. And they say right now they are being offered to be a part of committees, working groups, advisory committees, those sorts of things to talk through the process of what a potential divestment might look like. And this group is saying they're not interested in committees, rather they want commitments. The university has been saying that all legal options are on the table for what would happen next, and that of course would include having the police come in. I pressed one of the organizers during a press conference earlier today about if they reject this offer, if they stay here past 4 p.m. and the police end up getting called, are they ready to deal with police? Here's what they had to say.
We've known that this has been, an option, from the administration since day one. Really, in this current moment, it is up to the administration whether they are willing to be serious, to engage in a genuine conversation about commitments towards divestment.
The university, meantime, is saying that their deal is fair as far as issuing those trespass notices. They say that they will take a couple of days to consider their options going forward, but certainly the university president is not ruling out bringing in the police.
There are many steps that have to be followed before we would ever get to that point. We are doing our level best to avoid police involvement, and we've told the protesters that.
So all of this is happening right smack dab in the middle of the University of Toronto campus, and you see students going about their business, walking by here all day long. Some of them certainly are supporting the encampment and the protesters who are here. Others, though, are saying that they feel less than safe, frankly, being around the encampment and being here on campus. We were talking with the Jewish group Hillel Ontario earlier today about what some of their members are feeling.
I think the university has an obligation to ensure that students are safe, Jewish students and all other students, and that's not been the experience of Jewish students, certainly over the last number of weeks.
Meantime, some of these students here who are part of this encampment protest say that they are starting a hunger strike. They're a couple days in already, and they say that they will continue to go ahead with that hunger strike until they get an offer from the university that meets their demands. And they say that they are ready to deal with police if and when they come here once those trespass notices are handed out. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
The passenger who was riding in a cargo van involved in a wrong-way crash on Highway 401 that killed an infant and his grandparents has been charged in connection with a robbery linked to the incident. A court documents show Manpreet Gill is facing 12 criminal charges stemming from the day of the deadly crash near Whitby last month. Thomas Dagg has the latest.
Oh my God! That U-Haul van racing down the highway in the wrong direction. Two men were fleeing Durham police.
There's a psycho in a truck driving the wrong way.
The high-speed chase ending in a fatal crash that killed 3-month-old Aditya Vivan and his two grandparents. The van driver also died, and now CBC News has learned his passenger is facing charges stemming from the incident that led to this chaos. Newly obtained court records show Manpreet Singh Gill is charged with a robbery at an LCBO liquor store, possession of up to $5,000 in stolen merchandise, and several counts related to breach of probation. He and the driver were both out on bail at the time of the crash.
If he's out on bail, he shouldn't be out on bail. Multiple times, you shouldn't be out on bail. You continue to do the same thing.
It was a close call for Tammy Savalas. She and her husband were traveling right next to that transport truck as it slammed into the van.
He was coming right at us. That was my perspective. We didn't have any warning besides those westbound police.
Investigators say it all started with a robbery at this liquor store. Here's what Ontario Provincial Police were told in radio communications that evening.
Durham advising there was a male inside the LCBO. He tried to rob the store. He pulled a knife on an off-duty officer.
Ontario's police watchdog is looking into the chase and deadly crash, but the new charges provide fresh insight into what police allege happened. Durham's police chief hasn't said even when asked.
Could you clarify for us what happened in the LCBO that day?
Those events are not separated. Those are that is one event that happened, and I'm going to let the SIU complete their investigation.
The van passenger is so far the only person charged in connection with the chaos that day. After the crash, Gill was taken to hospital with serious injuries. His condition now is not known. Thomas Dagg, CBC News, Oshawa, Ontario.
You often see people riding them, but e-scooters are illegal in Toronto, with City Council voting yesterday to have it remain that way. There seems to be a lack of enforcement, though. As Dale Manukta reports, police and the city say they just don't have the resources or time to crack down on riders.
If you've been to a protest or political event in Toronto, chances are you've seen lawyer Karima Saad pull up. She frequents many events to document them and sometimes offer commentary. Her two-wheeled vehicle helps make it possible.
First of all, it's fun. They're a lot of fun to ride. And, you know, it folds, it's easily charged, just plug it into the wall. And I have control over my own journey and destination, so I'm not stuck waiting for a bus to come or the subway or even an Uber driver.
Saad is often in the presence of police, but none have ever made an issue of her riding an e-scooter, even though
they're prohibited. They can't be used anywhere in the city of Toronto other than private property. No parks, no sidewalks, no roads.
The most that's ever happened is if I forget my helmet, there's a bit of chiding, and rightfully so. It is important to protect oneself.
She's not the only one that's gotten off scot-free. There's many people using e-scooters in Toronto, and few are dinged for an offense. Here's what police told City Council on Thursday when pressed about enforcement.
I can state some statistics that in 2023, specifically for riding on sidewalk, there were 89 tickets issued.
Would you consider that a lot, or I just...
No, I would not, Councillor.
It can't always be police that are the solution to Toronto's problem, because we know that simply doesn't work and it costs a lot of money.
Police said as much. The resources aren't there, and there are other priorities often ahead in the queue. Despite the lack of enforcement, Council voted yesterday to keep the micromobility vehicles illegal. None of that has stopped sales of these speed cap demons from skyrocketing.
And because it's very compact, it's lightweighted, and it folds down, so you don't need to have a parking to have a scooter. You can take it to your apartments.
So for now, the ban continues. The city plans to post more signage to remind people of the ban, but
these are really traditionally very difficult offenses to catch and to write a ticket for. And if people are riding right on the streets, they're probably not going to get a ticket just for riding an e-scooter, I would.
Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
Advance voting is officially open in Mississauga's mayoral by-election. We spoke to some voters heading to the early polls and the main issues they want Mississauga's next mayor to address.
To get a better city and less expenses, less taxes, reduction in taxes would be nice.
I'm not sure if I was particularly shocked or enthralled with any of them.
To be honest, the transit, the poverty, the rent, the less work, jobs. Yeah, jobs, it's the main issue we have in here right now.
Mayoral candidate Dimika Damarila was also in attendance to cast her advance ballot. Now, advance polls are open today and tomorrow at the Mississauga Civic Centre. And on June 1st and 2nd, voters can cast their advance ballots at 22 locations from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. A full list of those locations is available on the city's website. And meanwhile, Election Day in Mississauga is just over 2 weeks away on June 10th. And one of the big topics, transit. From transit fares to bike lanes, candidates have been busy campaigning on the issue, trying to drive home their message of how they plan to improve ways to get around the city. Clara Pasica finds out how those ideas are landing with residents.
Vicky Tran and her dog are all ready to join a Cooksville slow roll, where members of the cycling community take in Mississauga trails and bike routes as a group. But trying to commute by bike in a city that often feels built for cars can be harrowing.
I feel like I have to mentally prepare myself every day to get out on the road.
She says there are too many sections of the city that are unsafe for cyclists, some with no bike lanes at all.
There are pockets of good spots, but it really depends on where you have to go.
She says she's looking for a candidate who understands the dangers of unsafe roads for cyclists and wants to get more people using two wheels. Cyclists aren't the only ones looking for better options to get around the city without a car. These University of Toronto Mississauga students rely on transit to get to class. They say My Way is barely getting a pass.
The main ones that come to campus are usually always full. You're going to have to wait in long queue times. It takes a long time to get to campus, and buses aren't as frequent as they should be.
The My Way transit, the time of it, it should be longer, because the TTZs in downtown, it's up until 2 a.m., 3 a.m., but here it's 11 to 12, so.
The people aren't going to choose a sustainable way of life if the sustainable option is not a viable option.
Many students we spoke to say transit is a top issue for them in this election. Here's what some of the mayoral candidates vying for their votes said they'd do. Deepika Damarla promises to build east-west connections to the Hurontario LRT on Dundas Street, Eglinton Avenue and Derry Road, bring the subway to Mississauga, fight the approved Bloor Street Integrated Road project that takes away car lanes to add bike lanes, and pause bike lane projects that don't connect to a network. Alvin Tejo wants to complete the proposed Dundas East LRT that will travel along Dundas Street and then turn north on Hurontario to merge with the new Hazel McCallion LRT, implement 4 new bus rapid transit lines along Derry Road, Erin Mills Parkway, Dixie Road, and Lakeshore Road, and advocate for 2-way all-day GO service along the Milton line. Carolyn Parrish says she'll create some sort of east-west connection to complement the in-progress Hazel McCallion LRT, advocate for all-day GO service to Milton, make safer cycling lanes, and have more speed humps installed. while Stephen Dasco promises to move a motion asking council to review the decision around the Bloor Street Integrated Project, extend the subway into Mississauga, and bring the Lakeshore TTC streetcar into Lakeview. And he'll increase the capacity and frequency of service on the most used transit lines. None of these proposals are budgeted, and several involve other levels of government. Voters have until June 10th to decide who has their vote. Clara Pasica, CBC News, Mississauga.
TTC workers could be going on strike for the first time in 16 years. The union that represents close to 12,000 TTC employees say they will walk off the job on June 7th if an agreement isn't reached in the ongoing contract negotiations. Greg Ross has the latest.
While a strike is still avoidable, the president of the ATU Local 113 says they are prepared for the worst.
We are planning, we are mobilizing, we're getting our members ready.
Marvin Alford says while some progress has been made at the bargaining table between the union and TTC management, there has been little movement on the biggest issues for workers.
We're asking for job security. We're asking for benefits. We're asking for wages. We're asking for simple dignity when it comes to delivering this reliable transit.
News of a potential strike was a surprise to many TTC users we spoke with today.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that would be a mess.
I take the streetcar every day down King Street to get to work. I'm a 9-to-5 guy, blue collar. So it's going to be tough for me, but, other people out there struggling. So, if they got a strike to get what they need, then that's the way it is, right?
Well, now I'm retired, so it's not that bad because I'm not working. But when I was working, it was really, really bad.
This is the first time the TTC has been in a position to strike since 2011, when the province introduced legislation that prevented them from walking off the job. Last year, that was ruled unconstitutional by an Ontario Superior Court judge. The union says they suffered big losses because of that law over the past decade.
They took advantage of our inability to strike and then gave us crumbs and whatever they thought was worthy.
News that the union had set a strike date did not come as a surprise to the TTC or the city.
We understand why it can appear alarming, but again, this is the normal cadence of bargaining between the union and management.
City Councillor and TTC Board Chair Jamal Meyer says he's confident there is still plenty of time to get a deal done.
I think there is a path to a fair deal for all sides. I just think it has to come through continued, ongoing, respectful negotiations.
He says they're prepared to negotiate around the clock if that's what it takes. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. It's an exciting weekend for history buffs and architecture enthusiasts. The city is holding its annual Doors Open Toronto, an event that lets people tour its most iconic places and get a peek behind the curtain. Brittany Billette got to take in some of the sights.
This is the secret entrance to one of Toronto's hidden treasures.
Getting to explore Bay Lower Station is pretty rare. It was abandoned in 1966 and locked away, usually only seen now in famous movies and music videos.
Why do you think people should come and see it?
I think everyone has a fascination. What's underneath Toronto? What are the hidden gems that we have here? And this is one of them.
But this weekend, it's open to the public, one of many sites featured during Doors Open Toronto.
For me, I think it's a great kind of gateway drug to Toronto's culture and architecture. There's such an abundant, over 150 sites. So you could literally close your eyes and pick one and you can't go wrong.
The annual event gives people free and full access to the city's historical buildings and unique landmarks. And this year's theme is Hidden Histories.
Doors Open is just such a beloved citywide event. It reaches every single corner, all the wards.
People are interested about what happens. Where does my water come from?
The R.C. Harris water treatment plant is a popular mainstay year after year.
Where we are right now, it's a filter operating gallery. This is also open for people to come and check it out.
An Art Deco marvel constructed in 1932 by Toronto's first Public Works Commissioner. And come Saturday, these hallways will be packed.
Last year, we had about 13,000 people over 2 days, which is a record.
A number of museums in the city will also have free admission this weekend, including the Aga Khan Museum, where people can see all of its buildings and new art installations.
We exist to highlight the achievements and contributions of Muslim cultures and the way in which they're connected to everybody else.
Yeah, good boy.
At the Humane Society, visitors can learn how it's evolved since its start in 1887 and get to interact with the animals currently being housed.
We're all about that human-animal bond, and people will definitely have that experience this weekend.
Across the city, there will be over a dozen neighborhood tours that pay tribute to the city's living past. Vranek says events like these help raise awareness about preserving Toronto's heritage.
I feel this way too, that every time you open a newspaper, a building is at threat. You know, the Japanese Cultural Center that Moriyama built, Ontario Center, and it really fills me with hope that people aren't taking that lying down. People are passionate about our buildings.
Toronto is the largest doors open event in Ontario, and the city says it's attracted more than 2 million visitors since it started 24 years ago. Brittany Billette, CBC News, Toronto.
A gorgeous, picture-perfect day to end the work week. Some wet weather is on the way, though. Victor Palo joins us now with more on how the weekend and the coming week are shaping up. Happy Friday, Victor. How's it looking?
Kelda, happy Friday. Happy Friday to everyone. Now, as we do take a look ahead at what we're going to be expecting for our weekend weather, well, it's going to be two things happening. One, well, we are expecting some thunder showers to pass by when it comes to Saturday. It'll be beginning around noon, as we discussed yesterday. We're going to look ahead at the map to see exactly when to begin. And it should be all said and done towards it comes to your nighttime after supper for Saturday. So not a big system passing by, but definitely enough that if you do hear that thunder roar, you want to head indoors. Now, when it comes to the rest of your weekend, and especially Sunday, it is going to be a sunny day in the GTA. Great day to be outdoors. Great day to take advantage of the lovely weather before the rain next week. Now, the rain next week, we're expecting to begin around Sunday night in towards your Monday and your Tuesday. And it's going to be a bigger system passing by than the one that'll be on Saturday. But Saturday is going to rain. It's going to be really good for the plants as well. It's going to be really good to have for the grass. Now, you see the average high for today is 220.4 and your average low dropped down to 8.3. Now, as we do take a bit of a peek ahead as to what's happening with all of that rain, well, you can see Friday overnight tonight, not that bad, but as we get closer to around midday on Saturday, here comes the rain, and the rain passes by, but by the time it's supper time, it's all said and done. Now, Sunday's going to be a day where we're going to see a little bit more cloud cover over the GTA. As I do take a step aside here, you can see that replay happen with that rain pass by. Here's the Great Lakes, here's where we're located, and as we get later on in towards your weekend on your Saturday, you can see that here on Sunday morning, it's going to be more of a cloudy day in comparison to what we've had earlier this week, and a lot of that cloud cover is going to be attributed to that rain, which we're going to be expecting later on the week on Monday and Tuesday as well. Now, taking a quick look at the overnight temperatures, well, it's going to be around the mid-teens, similar temperatures as it's been for the majority of the week. And we do take ahead for tomorrow morning around 6 a.m. If you're someone like myself, like take advantage of those early tea times, well, it's going to be a bit of a chilly one. You want to make sure you're packing a long sleeve, pants, and shirt because it's going to be cold, unlike the warm days we've had. Quick look at our 3- and 5-day forecast. It's going to be some pretty beautiful above seasonal temperatures, but by the time Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday arrives, we're right back to seasonal temperatures. Hope you have yourselves a great weekend, and over to you.
Great, thanks so much, Victor. The International Court has ordered Israel to halt its offensive against the southern Gaza city of Rafah. It's the latest order from the court and the most serious since it agreed in January to hear a case brought by South Africa alleging genocide in Israel's Gaza campaign. Julia Chapman reports.
Under the Genocide Convention, Israel must immediately halt its military offensive and any other action in the Rafah governorate.
As well as ordering Israel to cease operations in Rafah, the International Court of Justice called for the Rafah border crossing to be reopened. It's been closed since coming under Israeli control earlier this month, sparking warnings from aid groups that the main route for supplies had been cut off. Israel has also been ordered to allow access for investigators to enter Gaza and make their assessments. The ICJ judges said new measures were necessary because the situation in Gaza had deteriorated, describing it as disastrous. The court also found that Israeli evacuation orders left Palestinians vulnerable. The United Nations says at least 800,000 people have been displaced from Rafah since those orders were made. Living in temporary shelters, many of them don't have access to clean water or sanitation. South Africa, which brought the case against Israel, has welcomed the ruling, calling it groundbreaking and much stronger than previous judgments from the ICJ. It says it will urge the UN Security Council to take measures to uphold it, although any such efforts are likely to be vetoed by the United States. The Palestinian Authority, which governs the West Bank, says the judgment represents an international consensus to end the war in Gaza. Hamas says the ruling should have gone further, but it has promised to cooperate with any investigators that enter Gaza. Israeli officials have reacted strongly to the news, with spokesperson David Mencer saying stopping the war against Hamas would be suicide. Israel has already vowed to ignore any international court orders that call for an end to fighting. It argues its offensive is aimed at rooting out Hamas and protecting Israeli security. Julia Chapman, CBC News, London.
The Israeli military today announced it had recovered 3 more bodies of victims in the October 7th Hamas attacks.
Their bodies were rescued during a special operation based on precise intelligence in the area of Gaza.
All 3 were killed in Israel, then taken to Gaza. 2 were among the hundreds killed at the Nova Music Festival. 1 was a foreign tourist. Israel's military again vowed all the hostages, living and the dead, will be brought back. The truck driver who caused the deadly bus crash involving the Humboldt Broncos junior hockey team has been ordered to be deported. The Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada issued its ruling today. Aaron Collins has more.
Today's news was not a surprise for Jaskrit Singh Sidhu or his legal team. The deportation order issued today more process than anything else, and Sidhu's lawyer says his client isn't done fighting to stay in Canada. Sidhu was behind the wheel of the truck that ran into the Humboldt Broncos team bus in April 2018, killing 16 people. Sidhu, a permanent resident, was convicted of dangerous driving causing death the next year, sentenced to 8 years in prison. Those 2 facts, Sidhu not being a Canadian citizen and his conviction for a serious crime, made today's deportation order mandatory, and one that can't be appealed.
It doesn't matter if they're a career criminal or they did one momentary lapse like my client. It doesn't matter if they arrived yesterday or if they've been here for 10 years like my client and are well established. Family ties are irrelevant. My client has a Canadian wife and a Canadian child.
But Sidhu's lawyer says his client isn't done trying to stay here. He will now reapply for permanent residency status on humanitarian grounds because Sidhu would be separated from his wife and child if deported.
I think there are very, very compelling, compassionate considerations here. And we would hope that, we get that kind of consideration. I'd like to see compassion triumph here.
Families of the people who died in the Humboldt Broncos crash are divided on the issue. Some want to see Sidhu removed from Canada. Others say they're okay if he stays. It's unclear how long that permanent residency application will take. It could be months or even years, and Sidhu could be deported before a decision is even made. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Calgary.
Border and Customs officers could go on strike as early as next month. Workers with the Canada Border Service Agency have voted 96% in favor of job action. Among the issues they want addressed, wages, remote work, and retirement benefits. A strike date hasn't been set, but the union anticipates being in a legal strike position in early June. 90% of border officers are considered essential and can't walk off the job, but job action could cause major disruptions to the flow of goods, services, and people at ports of entry. 3 years ago, job action resulted in major delays at airports and borders nationwide. An agreement was reached after a 36-hour bargaining session. Younger voters came out in record numbers in 2015 to help Justin Trudeau win a majority government. But since then, their support for the Liberals has faded. Millennial and Gen Z voters could make up close to half of all voters in the next campaign. And that has the Prime Minister and members of his caucus trying to find new ways to win them back. Ashley Burke has this story.
Just try to come around further away from the camera.
These Gen Z staffers work for Employment Minister Randy Boissonneau, but in this case, they're calling the shots.
And then am I smiling or am I just walking by you?
I'm going to say with confidence you're walking away.
They're directing social media videos that could hit with millennials and Gen Z like this. I'm working late. The Liberals have heard from young Canadians they want authentic politicians. This is one way they're trying to win trust.
Got to have some videos that are fun, that maybe are edgy, but that also say to people, I'm real.
It's all part of a new push to reach younger voters. Mary Ng bought her own drone to bring on international trips. MP Nate Erskine-Smith just hired a filmmaker to produce his content.
It's answering the questions that they have, speaking to the issues that they have on platforms that they are on.
Trudeau's Liberals need to win the support of Canada's largest voting demographic or risk losing the next election.
Right now, the Liberals are in the worst position they've been in with millennial voters and Gen Z voters.
That support, he says, drifted to the Conservatives, who are reaching them where they get their news, on social media, and talking about their issues.
You want to be able to afford rent? Then you have to vote for Pierre Poilievre.
In the last year, the Liberals have pivoted with housing announcements and a budget focused on younger Canadians.
To ensure fairness for every generation.
But how do you get that message to younger voters who don't watch traditional news?
We got to meet Canada's Deputy Prime Minister and
talk to content creators, including Danica Nelson. She says creators like her with thousands of followers are a way to reach this generation.
They want to meet people where they are, and they know that people are on social media.
Wait, don't scroll. This is important.
The Prime Minister's office is also sharpening its social media game, doing more interviews with podcasters and making more videos explaining policy.
You may have heard of the capital gains tax.
That video getting millions of views, but whether that translates into trust and votes is too early to tell. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
If you have a child on wait lists for daycare, you're far from alone. Data collected by CBC sky high across the country for $10 a day childcare. Providers are calling for more funding because their operating costs are rising and demand for daycare is outstripping supply. Marina von Stackelberg has the story.
Sherry Rieger's daughters are on 15 childcare wait lists. The family, like many across Canada, is struggling to find a licensed provider.
Some of them are saying that we won't have a spot for 2 or 3 years.
It's been 2 years since the federal government signed its last deal with provinces to spend tens of billions of dollars to create more childcare spots and eventually cut fees parents pay to $10 a day. Daycares have overwhelmingly taken part, and that has caused growing pains.
As childcare has become more affordable, we hear from parents that want to access it, that are having trouble finding spaces.
Providers say they are struggling to operate the spots they already have. The funding hasn't kept up with inflation and the need to pay childcare workers a livable wage.
We do need to take into consideration those costs, and those will only increase as the demand goes up.
As part of the deal, daycares also can't raise their fees, an option they had in the past to offset costs. Some private childcare centres in Ontario who can access those public dollars have threatened to pull out of the program altogether unless they get more money.
The funding will have to rise across the whole sector, but it is not coincidental that this game of chicken is not being played by anybody other than the for-profit sector.
It's hard to know exactly how many childcare spaces are needed. Each daycare has its own wait list and many families are on multiple. But the latest data from Statistics Canada shows half of Canadian families now report struggling to find a spot.
The funding is great. It's a great incentive to get us moms back out to work. But again, if I can't access it, what is the point?
To add to Sherry's anxiety in finding daycare, she's expecting her third child this fall. That baby doesn't have a name yet, but is already on a wait list. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
As we head to break, here's a look at where the markets closed today. The TSX rose 120 points, the Dow climbed 4 points, and the dollar traded up at 73.14 cents US. We'll be right back. A Nova Scotia fisherman caught a rare yellow lobster off of Pictou Island this week. It's considered a 1 in 30 million catch. He spoke to CBC about the one that didn't get away.
Kind of just stopped and said, holy moly, look down this trap here. We're just on the west end of Pictou Island. So all operations kind of came to a standstill, and this it stood out from the rest. It was just a bright yellow lobster, and something I'd never seen before, and neither did they. In 18 years he fished, so it was almost like he just fell in a can of yellow paint, more or less. So first thing was first. Of course, everybody had their cell phones out, and a half dozen pictures or more were taken, and just sat there and admired it, I guess, for the next few minutes, and then carried on, of course.
Where's the lobster now?
It's been turned in. It's going to go to the Northumberland Fisheries Museum on the Pictou waterfront. So it's from what I know is it remains there for the summer and on display so the public can see. And then as far as I know, they release it at a later date.
And how big would that lobster have been?
It was a market size, but it was small. It was probably around the 1 pound range. It was female and but healthy and yeah, no, it's just small overall though.
Just yellow.
Just yellow, bright yellow. Yeah, no, it was.
All right, let's go back to Victa now with a final check on your forecast. And Victa, tonight looking good, but some showers are on the way.
As we do know, overnight tonight, it's going to be a high pressure system over Toronto, which means you get to see those stars. But as we get later on towards your Saturday, we are going to be expecting that rain to pass. Now, that rain will be arriving around noon, 2 o'clock, and there will be some chance of thunder showers. So if you hear that thunder roar, make sure you do head indoors. But then Sunday morning is going to be a clear one, similar to how our morning will begin tomorrow on Saturday. And then a clear start to your Sunday. But the difference is Saturday and Sunday morning are going to be cooler than we've been expecting or than we've been experiencing, correction, earlier this week. Temperatures are going to be closer to around 11 degrees, closer to the lower teens. We've been seeing temperatures to the mid or high teens a lot of the times this week. Now, a quick look ahead at how much rain is exactly going to be falling across the region. Well, we can see that around Saturday at noon, not a lot has passed by yet. But once noon happens, you're going to see that that's when the rain really starts to pick up. Now, as we talked about, Saturday morning is going to be a bit of cloud cover, but here we are around 11 o'clock. You can see that rain is already starting to pass. And as you get later on into your Saturday around 2 o'clock, you can see the buildup of that rain with a chance of thunder showers with it. That's that yellow you see mixed in with the green. Now, as you get into the rest of the system, you see that right around Saturday, close to the supper time, things start to die down. As you get into your overnight Sunday, the clouds will be a little bit there, but not as strong. And the good news is they're not going to be bringing along any rain with them. But as you wait until the rest of your Sunday to pass by, you'll see that Monday morning, another system is passing by. And this rain is going to continue all the way from Monday into your Tuesday and into your Wednesday as well, which leads us to tonight's overnight temperatures, which will be in the mid-teens, and it's going to lead to a cooler morning tomorrow, around 11 degrees here in Toronto. Now, a quick look at our 3- and 5-day forecast. We see that once that rain passes by, things are going to get a little cooler with a high of 25 on Saturday, but that high of 23 on Sunday is followed up by a 21-degree Monday, and then we get back to the teens. It's going to be an 18-degree Tuesday and a high of 17 on Wednesday with a low of 7 degrees. Hope you all stay dry and enjoy that weekend. Over to you.
All right, thanks so much, Vic. That is our show for you tonight. Thanks for joining us. I will see you back here on Monday, and we'll leave you with some spectacular video from Australia's biggest festival of lights, which kicked off today. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone.